Hey guys, what's up? Sundays lately have been Mad Mod Sundays for me lately. And this Sunday, what I want to do is I want to tackle putting a new heat exchanger in my 2007 Mustang. I picked up a rather reasonable Afco Pro dual fan heat exchanger. So let's get busy and let's get through this. Okay, you're on the 07 09s, your inner skirt comes in two pieces. You got front and back here. So you need to take off your front piece to get at some stuff here to get your front bumper off. You can leave the back on. I'm actually going to end up taking my back off because I'm going to be running a switch from the fans to be able to turn them on and off inside the cab. So I'll take that out so I can get through the firewall here. But like I said, you can leave that on if you're not going to do that. So you got three bolts here. Once you got that inner skirt off that have to come off. It's 10 millimeter, and then you just have three connections for your marker lights here and your fog lights. So you got one, two, three that have to snap out, and you should be able to take your bumper on. All right, with everything unclipped, you just pull on the sides. You got a couple of clips up here. Big deal, you just got to lift it up over the top. And slides right off. Okay, now you got to pull this urethane absorber off. It's just two clips, one on this side, one on that side. Once you pull the clips, pulls right off. Next, you want to drain your system. Your nipple's on your passenger side on the lower part of your intercooler right there. Get yourself a clean bucket and unhook her and drain her. Okay, now you've got 4 bolts, 2 on this side, 2 on this side. They got to come out. They're 13 millimeter, so you obviously need a 13 millimeter socket and an open end wrench to hold it in the back. And this is your intercooler pump right here. There's the connection, electric connection right there. You got on clip, and then there's 2 hoses. One on the top here that you can see, and then there's one below it. You have to take those out. Take those off the intercooler pump. And should slide right out. I think there's a, yeah, right here. There's also a plastic shield that directs the air into the radiator. You'll have to unclip that. Just slide that out of the way, I believe. I'll see what happens when I get the cooler unbolted. But I do think you'll have to at least unclip those and slide them out of the way a little bit. Okay, so there actually was a couple of clips in here that you had to unclip. 2 on this side, 2 on the other side. And down below, attached, there was a couple of these wings here. And they just snap right off. Make sure you put these back in when you go to reassemble, because these direct air into your radiator. After you do that, everything's loose. She'll slide right out, and right up. You just have to bend this back, so it does. So what do you think, guys? There's a little difference between the 2 intercoolers. Amazing improvements the aftermarket makes with some stuff, huh? All right, now you gotta transfer your intercooler pump over to your new Afco unit. It's 2 13 millimeter bolts, and disconnect the hose. All right, now you got to transfer the pump over. And just an FYI, I watched some videos, obviously, to try to learn how to do this. And all the videos say you're just going to take the pump and you're going to just move it over. Well, I had a heck of a time getting the pump and these fittings to line up, because you gotta run your line from here to here. And the fitting kept on hitting the fan down here. Well, I guess I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I want to mention it anyway. What you want to do is you want to lube this up with some WD-40, and then you can actually move it, the mounting sleeve here, to get it in the position that you need to get it. If you get a brand new Afco heat exchanger, they will supply a hose for you that will actually go. This is the hose that came off of my factory. Obviously, that's not going to work. So they actually supply you with a hose that'll go on there, and then you have to just trim it on this side here. So I actually went up to auto parts place, and I picked up this hose. So obviously I'll make it work. I'll get this angle correct. I think it's like 12 to 14 inches over here, and be good to go. Now, if you get a brand new one, Afco unit, they'll supply hose clamps with you, or you can probably just use the ones that you had on here, which that's what I'm going to do. I don't really think it really matters to get everything all buttoned back up again. All right, now you got to get all 4 of these grommets in. You want to make sure that the washer is facing towards the back of the car, or the fan side. You just basically put that in, and you snap it in like so. All right, now to mount your new heat exchanger. The bolts you took out, we're not going to be reusing those. Actually, Afco supplies you with longer bolts, and you start threading them in. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to thread them through just so they extend about a 1/4 inch or so. That should be good right there. Put all 4 of them in. All right, I got my heat exchanger installed here. I found it was easier to go from underneath the bumper up, and you just had to bend these wind deflectors back, like I said before. As far as bolting these in with the 4 bolts, like I said, you threaded it through about, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, just so you could catch. And then when you put the new ones in, you don't need to go crazy, but you should depress these about a 1/4 inch or so, so all 4 of them are nice and snug. All right, now we've got the heat exchanger all mounted. Just got to connect up 2 hoses. You got one here that goes into your pump, and you got the other one down here. It goes into your drain on the bottom here. All right, now that we've got the heat exchanger installed and hoses connected back up, it's time to fill the system. I decided that I was going to put brand new in. I guess if your fluid is good when you drain it, you want to reuse it, you can. I decided to go new. And in the 07, 09 cars, they recommend the Motorcraft Gold VC7B solution. I bought the undiluted, so you got to dilute it 50-50 with distilled water, and it calls for about I think it's about 1.5 gallons of fluid by the time all is said and done. You want to fill it, and when you're testing it, it'll drop a little bit, and then you want to top it off. Okay, now that you've got your heat exchanger mounted, it's time to tackle the wiring on this project here. Make sure before you start your wiring, you disconnect your negative terminal on your battery. you're going to want to grab power out of your fuse box on your passenger side here. And you'll see there's two connections, one connection right back here where the power goes in. You're going to have two power leads that are going to have to go underneath that and screw that in. Another thing, I couldn't figure out the best way to mount your two fuse holders here. I settled on this. I think it's a nice, neat place to put them. Is right underneath one of your fender bolts here, and they sit low enough where they're not going to interfere with the hood closing. So I don't know. It just looks nice and neat to me. You guys can do what you want with that, but after that, you got to run your wires underneath and up to your front so you can put your grounds in. Just make sure that you route it underneath, away from anything that gets hot, so you don't have to worry about that. All right, one of the things that I did want to do with the system here is I wanted to wire a switch in so I could turn the fans on and off. Some guys might not want to put a switch in, but to me there doesn't seem to be a reason to keep the fans on all the time, especially when you're driving at a decent rate of speed. I mean, I think the fans are going to be very useful, obviously, when you're in stop-and-go traffic. And if you wire a switch and you don't want to turn them off, you just leave the switch on. So it's a nice little accessory to have. One of the things that I've seen some guys have been doing, though, is they've been actually wiring the switch to that orange wire that you use to connect the intercooler pump and the fans. And I don't think it's wise to actually switch your intercooler pump off and your fans at the same time. So what I decided to do is just do a loop off of my ground. And pretty simple. Obviously, this is where your ground gets connected in here. And I took both of my ground wires right here. Each one of the fans had its own separate ground wire. Crimped them together, ran it through the switch inside the vehicle, and back out, and voila, we have a ground switch. So obviously what it does is it disconnects the ground and just shuts the fan off, and the intercooler pump is still running. Another thing of note is I like to use these waterproof connectors and crimp these on. Even though my car doesn't see any water, it's a really nice tight connection and very reliable. So I highly recommend. All right, after you run your wiring up to the front and connect your grounds up, what you got to do is you've got to splice your orange wire that actually comes out of your new Afco harness into a wire that goes into your pump mechanism there, and it's a yellow wire with a red stripe on it. So you can see here I spliced it in with a nice crimp waterproof connector. All right, now that you've got everything hooked up, all your wiring done, what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to test your system. In lieu of starting your car and having it warm up and have waiting for the fans to kick on when it warms up, you can actually just jump the system. Got your little relay right here. You pull out the one closest to the front. And then what I did is I made myself a nice little jumper relay here, so I can actually stick it in here. I can get it to stay in there. There we go. So lid then on, you can hear the fans going, and I'm getting a really nice flow through my hoses. Truth be told, when I first started doing this, I couldn't get the pump to prime properly. I couldn't get it burped. So after squeezing hoses and what have you, finally what I decided to do was just disconnect the lower hose here, just let it flow for about a second or two, hooked it back in, and then she started to pop. So if when you're doing this you have an issue with that, that's one of the things that I would try. All right, guys, that's just about it. The only thing left to do is get your bumper put back on and get the inner skirts all clipped back in. Your radiator support, not your radiator support, your radiator cover, and this mod is officially over. I hope I was able to give you guys a couple of tidbits that'll help you out when you get going here, putting yours in. So thanks for watching. Have a good one. One last thing. A couple years ago, I opted to put in these louvered inserts, top and bottom, for my grill area here. And I noticed I was getting a decent amount of restricted airflow with these, and I think it added to my my problems when I put the smaller pulley in and the tune. So while I had this apart, what I opted to do was to actually take a 5-inch hole saw. You can see here I put 3 holes, 3 5-inch holes, and you really can't notice it from the front. And I think it's really going to help with the airflow. And I also put three holes in the bottom with smaller ones. Obviously it's a smaller grill. I think I used a 3-inch hole saw. So I think it should make a huge difference with my new heat exchanger that I put in here. So if any of you guys opted for this, like I said, I used this particular grill instead of the Cervini unit because the Cervini unit was pretty pricey. So I don't ever plan on taking this off. So I think it was a good little mod to do while I had everything apart.